We are live. We are live. Let me turn on the Facebook. Okay. And I'll turn down the sound so we don't have feedback. Happy Change Wednesday. And today, first of all, let me get on Facebook here so that we're sorry. Usual one-man show. All right. Okay. I think that'll work. I believe we've gone live on two machines. So here we are. It's March 2nd, not 3rd yet. It's March 2nd, and we are in Conscience Land. And I want to welcome people to a broadcast. I'm sorry I'm late. Usually it's 15:33, 3:33 in the afternoon. Usually that's when we do it for all kinds of reasons. And I've had messages from colleagues, ambassadors, coaches, and so on, that because of the situation in the world, people are being evicted from their homes. There's real carnage going on. So what we need to do is be in solidarity together with the 3 virus, right? Don't forget the 3 virus. It's not a virus that's going to hurt you. It's a viral campaign that's going to make the world a better place. It's going to make the world a better place. Why? Because we're going to take our individual social responsibility, right? And we're going to bring peace. I would say we're going to enforce peace, but not enforce it on anyone else. We're going to enforce it on ourselves. And so I'm sorry, I'm just checking to make sure that this is actually streaming right now. I believe it is. Okay, I think it is. Again, I apologize for the lack of professionalism in the use of the technology, but I think the most important thing is to just get the information out. Okay, and also to keep it upbeat, because there's too many terribly bad things happening in the world right now to be adding to that misery. A few things I'd like to chat about. It's pretty hard not to be a little bit not negative, but realistic about what's going on. I think all the Pollyanna, oh, don't worry, let's just play around with each other and let the powers that be do what they're already have been planning to do, and they are executing that plan. That's not realistic, and that's actually pretty childish. It's pretty irresponsible to think that the governments are going to fix this. Oh my gosh, it's so horrible right now. The governments are the problem. They are the ones that are not only not going to fix this, they are the ones that are creating this dystopian world. And in many instances in the country that I was born into, that government is actually going against our own freedoms, against our own charter. They're mandating things all over the place. So of course we were talking earlier this last month about the vaccination mandates and so on, but now there's all kinds of things that are creeping in, and people are realizing that their actual ability to move around, whether they're a trucker or not, has nothing to do with what your job is. It's about you. They're coming for you. And that's, I hope you're waking up with Roger the Reality Rooster. I hope you're waking up to that reality, right? That's the thing, is it's, I got funny, silly little toys here, but hopefully you'll realize that over these years, what I've been trying to encourage in you is that you make that move. you look into it yourself. You observe what's going on, and you make the evaluation yourself about what you need to do, right? To look up, stand up, and speak up. You have to do that. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So that's the big deal. Is that we're another one of our ambassadors. He just mentioned that he can't make it on the phone today, on the Zoom call or anything else. We're not doing a Zoom call because so many people are not able to do a Zoom call. But I felt it was absolutely important, even though I'm almost an hour late in getting online. I felt it was extremely important to talk about today's subject. And today's subject is Freedom Wednesday. And you might think I'm going to talk about truckers who were protesting in Ottawa, and I won't. I'm not talking about those truckers. I'm talking about actual freedom, right? The actual freedom. The actual freedom is your freedom. And the fact of the matter is, as I mentioned, one of our ambassadors is actually in the Middle East, and he was saying, "I'm reading the book 1984." 1984, the book 1984. He says, I'm reading this, and well, it was a short note, but the point was, he's reading this book, which I reread about, I think it was 2019. I reread 1984, and it's just a very, very important book for people to read again. It was written in 1948. Imagine, 1948, right after the Second World War, and that George Orwell wrote. I mean, it's almost like a manual. It's almost like you're seeing the pages just come to life. And for that reason, it's a very scary book to read. But it's still a novel. It's still a fantasy. But you read it and you realize, well, here's something I realized just sitting down yesterday. And I have here, I've written Conscience Land versus, I don't know if you can see it there, Conscience Land versus Totalitarian World. And I've got the world badly drawn, but I've got the world, here's the UK and Western Europe, and here's Russia in the middle, and here's China and East Asia. And in the film, in the book, there were 3 super states, right? There were no countries anymore, which is what we keep saying in Conscience Land, that we've got to stop talking about countries because countries don't actually exist. Well, we don't want to go to the extent of centralized blocks. Okay, we're in Conscience Land. We don't want people to think in terms of countries because countries don't exist except as a conflict, except as a barrier to somebody else. The only thing that really truly exists is your community. That's where you live, and how you live. You get your food from your community. You get your water from your community. You get your neighbors and your what's good in your life from your community. You don't get it from the state. You get it from the community in which you live. Maybe the state helps out, but I doubt it. Right? Not in these days. What we're seeing is that the state doesn't care about you. The state is just trying to keep going as a state, and we are simply numbers. We're the same pawns that we have been all through history, right? So what as I sort of sketch this out in my thinking about the book, I looked at Oceania. Here were the 3 superstates of 1984 book, which is 1984 is now so many years ago. Another friend of mine said, "Okay, set your clocks back to 1984." We should be called in 2024 or something like that. Okay. Anyway, so here's Europe, Oceania, right? It's the Atlantic. It's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's Western Europe and Anglo-American collaboration. So you've got that, and then you've got Eurasia, which is essentially Russia, and then you've got East Asia. These were the three super states, right? And they were continually at war, and nobody could tell who was doing what. Like, I mean, the media was confusing, and in fact, mid-speech in the novel, mid-speech, the speaker would be having their 1 minute of hate, and then they would say, we're fighting East Asia, and then by the end of the speech, we're fighting Eurasia, right? They changed the narrative in mid thought, mid sentence. Have you seen that happen here with us, in our world today? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what's happening. We're 1 minute we know what our enemy is via the media, and then the next minute it's a different enemy, or it's a new enemy, and we are distracted from the old one, like viruses and stuff like that, and then we're now in a new one, war. Okay, which brings me to explain. Always I have to explain, because people think it's some kind of militaristic thing. Why am I wearing this hat? And most people don't know. They have no idea. They have no concept. But it is the hat that I wore when I was doing this film in China called Dr. Norman Bethune. I mean, I played the character Dr. Norman Bethune, and Bethune was a doctor who was a anti-fascist, Antifa, and he was fighting not against people with bullets. He was healing as a weapon, right? It's not a weapon. It's a healing. He was healing. He was doing what we do in Conscience Land. It's a weapon of mass inclusion. He included everyone, including Japanese soldiers who were fighting the Chinese. He would help them both. And in fact, he was a volunteer in the Spanish Civil War as well, and he was helping everybody. Now, primarily, he was helping those who were fighting fascism, not the fascists themselves. But he was a humanitarian. You were alive, you're a human, you were deserving of care. You were deserving of medical treatment. And that's what he did. That's what you do. So we have a current war situation in Ukraine. And of course, it's illegal and wrong and all those things for another state to come in and occupy or be a military force inside another country, or shell it from the outside, or bomb it from the outside. Of course, that's wrong, illegal. We never condone it. We never agree with it. But it's a very, very complex issue, right? And I have a friend just pointing out about countries. Again, I'll discuss it a little later, but it's also a mindset. If you have this mindset, then you're trapped in the mindset. If you don't respect that mindset and you open up a new mindset, which is that communities are important, that your neighbors are important, that the supply chain of how you get food, maybe it's across an existing political border, but you need that food for your family, for yourself. What, are you going to not have the food because there's a political border there? When all the other systems collapse, which they are collapsing now, so holding on to nationalisms it's a fool's game. What are you holding on to? You're grasping at nothing. There's nothing there. There's only propaganda. There's only what's on paper. Your neighbors across borders are still your neighbors. And that is the point I'm trying to make. Right? I'm trying to make this point. Why? I'm not going to fight on this. I'm not going to kill anybody over my ideology of freedom over their ideology of slavery. I'm not going to do it, right? Because it defeats the whole idea of Conscience Land. But, I think that some people, it's very, very difficult to do. I've said before a number of times, and if anybody's interested, check out the newsletter that I've put in to the links. And in that newsletter, there's a link to medium.com where I write about Cool to be Canadian, which is something I started 30 years ago. This is the 30th anniversary today. I mean, this year. 30 years ago, I was talking about cool to be Canadian. But in defense of what I'm saying, I didn't say it's cool to be from Canada. I didn't say it was cool to be a person living in Canada. I said it's cool to be Canadian. Why? Because of the spirit, because of the essence, because of the relationship Canadians have. Not all of them, of course. There's lots of dumbasses too. But there are many, many, many more people historically who put aside politics and they worked together for the community. That's what they had to do in order to survive the winter, to survive the conditions. They didn't even have to like their neighbor. They certainly didn't have to agree with them politically. They didn't have to believe that there was a border between them, literally their property line. They didn't have to stop at the property line and ask permission to come and help. They didn't have to do that. And they didn't think this way. They thought, there's a person, they need help. I have freedom to move in the direction of that person. And that because I have that freedom, I have that responsibility. I have that ISR, individual social responsibility. It's my responsibility to go and help my neighbor build a barn or look for their, missing horses or whatever it is. It's my responsibility to assist them. Why? Because it's not only my responsibility in the moment, it's my opportunity for a type of social insurance, right? If I help in my community is much, much more likely to help me. I mean, it's almost inevitable. The more I invest in my community, the more the community insurance it grows. And this is the safety. This is the only safety. There's no safety from bombs of the governments, the bombs of the enemies, the supposed enemies, because we all are set up. I'm thinking again of Canada. This trucker thing was, the prime minister made an enemy of the people as enemy. He said there were misogynists and rapists. I know he didn't say rapists, but he said there's all these nasty words to fellow citizens who were protesting. Now, whether you agree with the protest or not, that's irrelevant. Is it legal to do so? Yes. Okay. And did they do that? Yes. And did they do it in a peaceful way? As far as I can see, I wasn't there, but I can. All reports, including the government's reports, say it was peaceful. So why did they have to invoke a measure that is against the citizens, all citizens' freedoms, not just the people who are protesting, all citizens' freedoms? Why did they do that? Where was the threat? Where was the actual threat? To the state. The state wants to protect itself, of course. All of these states are protecting themselves. Ukraine is protecting itself. Russia's protecting itself. All these states are protecting themselves. Right? Who are the pawns? Who gets hurt? The state? No. The people. The people of all of these places get hurt. Reputation, physical death, all kinds of things. All kinds of injury. Why? Because of the state. Now, my friend Frederick asks, why with all respect, Philip, the reality is that countries do exist, and while a world divided into countries may look negative, it also has benefits. A world without country is a globalist paradise when, a globalist paradise where the elites can have a lot more unconstrained power. Now that I am in complete agreement with, but you're not actually listening to what I'm saying about conscience land. I am not saying a one world government. Read the newsletter. Not everybody has seen it, of course, but the link is in the in this broadcast. Um, you know, I mean, I want to answer all questions about conscience land and the conscience verse. I want to answer all of them. Why? Because it's to help people live a better life. And I'm not going to benefit from it myself. I'm just a person who sees these things, and I see we're just slipping into a slippery, slippery slope all the time. And we're holding on to pretty old ideas. Well, actually, they're not that old. The nationalisms are really more recent in human history because of mass hypnosis, mass formation, propaganda, all these things. The governments, the powerful, were not able to convince enormous groups of people to work against each other before. They weren't able to do it. Individual groups had problems with each other because they were invading each other's territories. That's food, right there. So that's understandable. And human history is full of that, right? That individually and as groups, yeah, we don't like the other group that has a maybe different skin color or speaks a different language or prays to a different god. You think that they're the wrong ones and you're the right ones. Okay, well, we've seen, I mean, after a couple of thousand years, many thousands of years of human history, have we not seen that actually there's no right and wrong in human civilization? Every group has the right to live the way they choose to live, right? We can't tell them what to do. We can't make them all like Western Europeans or North Americans. We can't do that. We don't want to do that. I hope nobody really wants to do that. They think they want to do that. They think they want to follow the globalist model of, global, you know what a globalist model is, folks? Amazon. Amazon is a globalist model. If you think you like and want to maintain the domination of basically one company, because remember, Amazon is not just the books and not just the goods sold through their network. They are the network as well. They are the cloud. They are Amazon Web Services. They are military contractors. They provide services to government, military, and so on as a information exchange system and storage system. Come on, people, wake up. If you are using Amazon, you are a globalist. You're a globalist. What I keep talking about, and I'm hoping somebody really understands and gets on with conscience land, on the side of conscience land, which is not a side, on the spirit of conscience land, you need to not be buying through Amazon. You need to be buying from your local community. That's called Be, Buy, Boost, right? And again, just to blow my own horn, look into my background. Look into some of the things that I've done over the last 30, 40 years. And you'll see that, for instance, Be, Buy, Boost, I started that in, I think it was mid-90s or something like that. Okay, and it was Be, Buy, Boost Canadian, actually, because I was in Canada and I didn't have these sort of global perspectives at that time. But it was about buying locally, right? Be local, buy local, and boost local entrepreneurship. That was the simple idea. It wasn't nationalistic, like only buy Canada products. It was buy your local products. The things that people produce in your community. Now, what's wrong with that? Who's against that? Well, I think many of you are against it. Why? Because you're so caught up in consuming what you want or what you think you want that you actually ignore the reality that there are people in your community that are trying their best to provide you with a local source of food, a local source of goods, and maybe even jewelry or something, whatever. There are people that are trying to make a living, partially, but they also want to stay in their community and they also want to serve their community. And you're not supporting them. You're going to Costco and Walmart and Amazon, buying online through Amazon. You're doing all of these things. And, and as a result, your neighbors are starving, at least for business. Hopefully, they're not starving in terms of food, but that's coming. But the problem is that the farmers are not likely to starve. I mean, I hope not. But you will. You know why? Because you don't have any relationship to the farmers. You're not relating to the farmers. You're not friendly to them. You're not buying locally from that. You don't know them by sight. So they don't know you. Why would they help you specifically, especially over their friends and their neighbors and the people who supported them over their lives? Why would they help you? You know, even if you have a whole bank account full of useless fiat dollars, what do they care about you? Well, the reality is they don't. And that's your problem. Because if you've got the people who produce food, forget the people who distribute the food, they need to be friends with the farmers too. Because when, bad things happen, the farmers, for a period of time, they will be forced by governments to, give all their grain or give all their vegetables or whatever to the state, and the state will decide on who it's going to be distributed. That's your globalist model that Frederick's talking about. Yes, I agree 100%. If you encourage this great reset, if you encourage the WEF, Davos boys, which, by the way, again, if you read the newsletter I put out, you'll see I actually have direct experience and contact with this issue. I and many thousands actually of young people, I'm not the young people, I'm the old people, but marched up the mountains in Switzerland in 2020, right? Protesting against the WEF, against the World Economic Forum, and a failure. And that was real. That's a real thing. Okay, I'm not making that up. In fact, my friend Nuno from Portugal was there. I just see him watching on a wave, right? So he knows we were there. He was there. He knows that we were already awoken. We were woken up. Our eyes were opened up. Well, maybe not this one. Our eyes were opened up to what is it these people are doing? And I had no idea. Honestly, I had no idea when I first started the march up the mountains, cold in the snow. When we first started, I was just learning. I was just absorbing. What is this WEF? I had heard about it, but I thought it was some kind of government thing that happened every year, like some kind of a summit. And I really honestly didn't pay much attention to it, thinking, there's lots of these associations. Wow, boy, did I learn a lot from these young people who had been studying it and following it and exposing the people behind it. All these major corporations, every corporation that you have ever heard about is a member of this club, this private club. And many politicians, and here we get into what Frederick is bringing up about the globalists. You think for one moment that our project of Conscience Land and the Conscience Verse, which is about decentralization, right? It's not about nations centralizing power. It's about decentralization. Why? Because as the nation states fail, which inevitably they will, because every empire has fallen, every state has dissolved, everything has always gone back to just people. Everything throughout our human history. We have this delusion that it's going to remain the same in our lifetime. Well, I think that you can see from Ukraine and Russian border and NATO incursion and all the things that are happening, maybe that's not going to be true in months. I mean, God forbid, I hope not, because I think our mindset is such that we think everything is set in stone and a border is a sacred thing. But I'm going to get back to the people in a moment, but But think about, um, think or look it up. Actually, look up what the borders of Russia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire were. Okay, two names: Austro-Hungarian Empire. Look it up. Don't ask me for to explain it to you. It's nothing to explain. It was an empire. Look and see what the borders of that were and what they bordered on. And I'll tell you a little Cliff's Notes. It was Russia. So all of those states of Belarus and Latvia and Estonia and Finland and Ukraine and so on, they didn't exist. They existed as peoples, which that's what states are, usually originating from, but they didn't exist as independent states. They were part of Russia at that time. Now, this is a long time ago. This is like 100 years ago. But is 100 years a long time? Not really. Not really. No. It's not that long. So this is the thing I think people have to start to wake up to. Nothing is set in stone. The way our world looks today is not the way it looked at the beginning of the First World War. It's not the way it looked at the beginning of the Second World War. Things change. Borders change. Forces change. People's attitudes change. And that's what's happening. So in defense of conscience land, we don't want to see fighting. What we want to see is people living in freedom. Right? Not under state or globalist Great Reset. No. Great Reset is you'll own nothing and be happy, right? Which to some people it sounds good. Really, it does. Some people say, "Oh yeah, I want to just happy." But this is slavery. It's a form of slavery. And I'm not saying that everybody has to own like a car or a house or anything like that. It's not about the ownership part of it. It's about who owns what you need. Your homes. If the state owns your homes or private industry owns your homes and everybody's renting, right? Everybody's consuming and renting and eating and at the grace of the state's permission, well, look at people like me. I'm apparently, well, at least when I'm wearing my Sustana Claus hat, right? I am, an extremist. I was called an extremist. I don't know if some people have seen the magazine cover, right? I'm or the article cover. I'm an extremist, right? For my views as Sustana Claus. I'm used as a picture of extremism because I have a peace sign and I have the Sustainies. I have the Sustainies with me. I wish I had a picture of it right now to show you, but anyway, you can look it up. But I have the Sustainies. I'm wearing another crazy hat, right? And I'm an extremist because I want peace, because I want harmony, because I want to stop war. I'm an extremist. So, okay, I don't know if you're an extremist, but we have to smarten up on this because we're not going to make it. These three spheres of influence: Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. So I'll get to this, and then I'll get to the who's part of the WEF thing. So look at where Ukraine is. Right between Oceania and Eurasia. It's the border of the old Soviet Union, right? Which is in 1948 was there. So Oceania, which is Western Europe, Oceania, the Atlantic Ocean, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, it is a force which has been incurring on Russian border against the agreements. They agreed after the Second World War. I mean, that's what the NATO thing is about, basically, is they agreed not to put bases and so on right on the border of Russia, but they did. So they did, and Russia is saying, hey, but you said you wouldn't. And bioweapon labs and stuff. And so what do you expect the Russians to do? Right? Just continue to be pushed back to their borders? I mean, have no buffer zone? It's like I'm asking Americans to say, well, no, Canada, if it became, occupied by Chinese, they would be okay with that. I don't think so. I think Canadians would be pretty upset, but also the Americans would be flying off the handle. They wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow anybody on their border to be somebody they didn't trust. So there you go. Anyway, look at that. So there's Western Europe, the Anglo-American Empire. There's Western Europe buffering, not buffering, coming up against Eurasia, which is Russia, and a few other states, but essentially it's Russia. And then you've got East Asia. So you've got conflicts here, and I don't predict anything. I mean, how do I say this? Bad things can happen in a big, big way. Very bad things can happen, but I'm not hoping for that. Of course, I wish people would read the book 1984, not because it's a real book. It's a sort of a fantasy novel in a sense, but is it telling information that we should be thinking about? Should we be critically thinking about what's going on right now? Well, I hope so. If you're not critically thinking and you're just going, oh, well, the government says this, or the media says that, or this, okay, well, I just follow that. Well, come on. I mean, you're not thinking for yourself. You're just slavishly following what the propaganda, and it's clearly propaganda. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, There weren't. I know. Why? Not because I was there. I was in Montreal. I was being beaten by the police. I was being put in jail and in the hospital. I know what the reaction of the fascist state was against me as a photographer, for God's sake. In the newsletter, you can see pictures of one of my students taking pictures of me, and he took a picture of me being beaten, which I didn't put in the thing. Anyway, so it's not like I'm just talking off the top of my head, I'm not making this up. It gives me heart palpitations just thinking about it. It makes my body hurt just thinking about it. And that's 20 years ago. So here you've got East Asia, which is essentially China. Now, what's happening in East Asia? Don't use the word China, because just use the word East Asia, because it's also Japan, it's also Korea, it's also North Korea and South Korea. It's all these places, Vietnam and so on. That's East Asia. Now, they got their own problems, right? But what I would like to bring to your attention on this Freedom Wednesday, right? This is not being renamed, it's just another name for Change Wednesday. Right? Because we got to think not only about our personal change, we've got to think about our personal freedom and the freedom of others. If you don't believe in that, please turn this off. I don't want it. I don't want to give you any information that's going to benefit you in any way if you're not open-minded enough to think that we need to help other people, that we need to spread freedom, but not in the American, mujahideen freedom fighters way. That's word salad. That's made up stuff. Real freedom, the freedom that was expressed, and it was truly expressed, I believe, in Canada by the people who were supporting the truckers in Ottawa, and even on the bridges, and even at the border crossings. That freedom to protest, it's sacred. The freedom to criticize your government for what it's doing is a right. It is in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But people are ignoring. The government is ignoring it. They're saying, no, those rights are only like conditional. We can change that. Who can change it? It's a democratic system. If you want to change it, you talk to us, and we'll either agree with you or not. And if we don't agree with you, get the hell out of office. If we don't agree with you, let's put in somebody who does represent the people and the interest of the people. Not safety or serving the pharmaceutical industry. No, the real service to the people who you got your power from. Okay, it's a very big subject here, so I'm sort of bouncing a little bit all over the place. But I think if you're, if you're a smart person, you can follow what I'm getting at here. Here's the novel, right? 1984, and here's today. So 1984 is the novel. 2022 is where we are today. You know, we're in a situation where Ukraine is being invaded, and Taiwan is in let's call it jeopardy, right? And what I want to draw your attention to, and I don't know if I'll be able, if you'll think, oh well, I first heard it here, so I didn't know about this. But let me tell you something. Again, some of you know I lived in China for a period of time. If you look and you listen to some Chinese scholars and people who are maybe nationalists in China, nationalistic, proud of their country, wanting their country to survive and to be great, you will discover that I've drawn it very badly here, but above on the top of China, um, in what's called above in Manchuria and above um, Mongolia, Inner Mongolia, but and Mongolia itself, the country of Mongolia, uh, up into the Siberian plain, uh, was Chinese. For a long time ago, like Qing Dynasty or something like that. A long time ago, the Chinese had claim in their empire. They had claim to big chunks of Russia. Now, oh my gosh, imagine, and I'm not hoping, I'm not proposing that this happened, but it's just a really important thing to know. We're all focused on Taiwan, down in the Straits of Taiwan, in the South China Sea. We're all focused on, oh, well, there's this little tiny island, which is a very important island, but and all the chips for your phones come from that island, right? Not all of them, but many do. Um, we're all focused on this. Australia is willing to make nuclear war with their nuclear submarines with China, or threaten it at least, over that island. So economically, it's super important to the West, right? But that's, how do I say, it's small potatoes. It's small thing compared to incursion into Russian territory. Imagine what the world would come to if China, when seeing what Russia is doing in its uh, let's see, western border with Europe, if China watches Russia successfully reclaim territory that is now supposedly, well, it is part of Europe, right, and part of NATO. if Russia sees that happen, what do you think they might maybe do on Russia's southern border, which is the area that is in dispute between China and Russia? Maybe China says, well, we need land, certainly land north. We have drought in the south. We have heating climate in the south. So we need to get land. What is it called? Lebensstrauss or something? The Nazis talked about getting land for food, feeding people. I forget. I don't speak German, so I forget how to say it. But anyway, there's a name for it, and this was the justification for Nazification, right? The National Socialist movement. So it's not impossible at all that you see a world war, and a world war that is based on the same principles, the same things that are happening, in Europe and Russia, the same thing happening on the border of China and Russia, Right? Don't think about alliances. The Russians, the Soviet Union, and the Allies were allies in the Second World War against Nazi Germany. They were allies. They were Antifa. They were anti-fascist. Don't be so propagandized by American movies, right? The anti-Russian sentiment. Don't be so propagandized about that. They were on the side of stopping the expansion of Nazis in the 1930s and 40s. They were against that. Why? Well, partially because they lost 20 million people. 20 million Russians or more were killed in the Second World War. So you don't think they have a memory? Sure they do. You don't think they fear NATO pushing, now NATO, not the Germans, but NATO pushing against their borders and putting installations and biolabs and military installations and occupying, putting bases in the countries that are adjacent to them? Of course they are. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Well, I am saying it's wrong, but I'm not saying it's a justification for pushing back. But I think the US would push back. Canada would push back. Britain would push back. France would push back. Germany would push back. All these sovereign states would push back. Okay, so there's my little geopolitical, based on 1984 novel, but then looking at the reality of the situation of borders, of sovereign nations and their borders. They're not fixed. They are fluid. Over time, they are fluid. And I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying, oh, let's all go and hate the such and such people. No, people are not the ones that make this happen. It's not the peoples, it's not the religions or the cultures or there's no population on earth that is actually against themselves and against everybody around them. They don't want everybody to die. No, there's no population on earth like that. Pretty much every population, every society wants growth for themselves, security for themselves, for their children to live free and happy and be well fed. That's what they want. All of them, all of us. We all want that. So to say that the other people don't want that is ridiculous. It's childish. It's schoolyard bully talk. And we've got to stop it. Okay, so that's a long talk about that. Let me speak about these people. Because the stimulation came from the comment about nations and all these people loving nation states. And I apologized. In fact, in my newsletter, I apologized. My newsletter this month was about apology. I apologized for being duped all of this time. And I won't go into the details. Read the newsletter. I won't go into the details of what I feel duped about, although it's pretty extensive, right? Many things, to do with my understandings of my care, my support of governments. Up until the time I was beaten and put in hospital by the police, I was very much an establishment kind of person. I was very much like thinking, well, the government does the right thing. The police are my friends. I don't do anything wrong, so there's no reason for me to fear. Well, it changed within seconds, certainly minutes. It changed very rapidly because I saw that without freedom, without protection from the state, you are going to be hurt. Economically, physically, mentally hurt. I'm mentally injured by that. Certainly societally injured because I don't have the, happy-go-lucky, like caring and loving, feeling toward people and state and police and government. And I don't have the feeling. I had it when I was growing up because I had no reason not to. And I was told that, you should trust the police and the police are there to help you. and that the government was basically your servant, basically there to help you live a better life. But it's not true anymore. They are just corporate. They're serving a corporate, or as I'm about to describe, they're serving another master. So again, maybe I shouldn't go too far on this because this is public, and it is Freedom Wednesday, Change Wednesday. Smile, change, unplug. We should at least make an attempt at lightening up the situation so that people, can deal with the horror of what we're going through right now. I mean, most of the world is not going through this horror. It's the people in Yemen, in Syria, in Palestine. There's people in these areas that are going through horror, and now Ukraine. Right? This is the horror: is that when you start shooting guns and dropping bombs on people, blowing things up and killing people, then the horror is manifest. And if you can't get yourself out of the political justification of such actions, whatever side you're on, let's stop having sides. I mean, that's the point of it, right? Don't have sides. Don't be siding with one group or another group. We got one planet. We only have one planet. So it's basically one human civilization. There's one human population. Well, not civilization maybe, but there's one human population. We're a species, right? Doesn't matter what your skin color is or your belief system is. You're one species. Oh, of course, maybe there's aliens or something in us, but that's another subject for another day. I can't get my head around that one. But biologically, we're all the same. Got two ears, one nose, one mouth, and so on. So that pretty much we're one species, right, on one planet and one environment, and we gotta maintain that environment. Now, if we can't do it peacefully, maybe we should just separate out from each other. Okay, and this goes to my answer to my friend Frederick's comment. I'm not proposing a globalist, totalitarian, authoritarian state at all. This is exactly the opposite of what I'm proposing. They are using national ideas to subvert democracy, to undermine our freedoms, to take away our freedoms, basically. Mandate things, passports, this, that, the other thing. That's what they're doing. And when I say they, well, I don't know if I'll have the courage to name names, because I don't think the algorithms will help me, and I don't think you'll help me, because I don't see the understanding of what Conscience Land is about. People think maybe, I'm proposing that we all fight against some group and then we win. No, there's no winning when you're fighting. There's none, zero. What I'm proposing in Conscience Land is that we focus our energies on our neighbors, our community, the things that matter to us physically, emotionally, personally, face to face. Food doesn't come through the internet. Water doesn't come through the broadband. You got to wake up to the fact that if, God forbid, we're in any kind of a war situation, this is not going to work. It's going to be hacked. It's going to be cyber hacked. There's going to be an EMP go off. Who knows? I hope none of it, but all of it's possible. Right? And if you don't think that's possible, you're a gamer. You're sitting in the basement and you're playing shooter point of view games, and you're out of reality. You're not even part of this world. And I'm sorry to say that you will perish very, very rapidly. You will have no relationships with anybody in your community to get food, water, shelter. You're going to have to move. Your gamer thing console is not going to work. You're going to be like a babe in the woods. You're going to be absolutely unprepared. So I'm sorry about that. But I've been advocating for years through various projects that I've been involved in, Explore Sport, all these types of things, always asking people to go out into nature, start to understand, at least appreciate it, at least get the wash of the bathing in forest energy. Get connected with the universe, because that's it's the only way you're going to survive. You've got to know that you're part of this big, wonderful project of consciousness. And if you are and you participate in it, it guides you and it will guide you and it will keep you, right? It will. It has to. It's part of you. You are part of it. But we're all separating ourselves from it. We're all saying, oh, that's a group that has a different colored flag. Nah, nah. Okay, there's so many things I want to talk about. I just brought up the flag issue, and I'd like to talk to you about conscience flag, but maybe I won't in a public way because, I'm like sharing a lot of things that I'm supposed to only really share with people who make a commitment to Conscience Land, who at least sign up on the newsletter, right? And I've heard it sort of burns some people that they made an effort to join in Conscience Land, and support it in some way. You don't have to, but at least put your email in. And then I go and share all the stuff that they thought they were going to be the first ones to receive. Then I go and share it with everybody. So I understand. I mean, that's kind of my nature, but I understand that they made an effort, and I'm not living up to my promise to keep it only for them. Well, I'm sorry, I won't keep that promise I never promised to give it only for them. What we need to do in Conscience Land is grow the Conscience Land, right? So we need so many people to be all part of the Earth mobilization, part of the extinction fighters, if you will. You don't have to use fighters if you don't like the idea of fighting, but we are fighting a battle against a group, right? And again, I won't identify them, but you know who they are. And they are making the world a globalist paradise. And I'm not for that. I don't want that to happen. And I see the danger of it, very serious danger of it. And I see young children, I think their lives will be very, very much diminished in pleasure and creativity and freedom if we allow this to happen. So it's about decentralization. It's about community. That's what Conscience Land is about. So please, I appreciate the questions because then it gives me an opportunity to explain it. Let's think. Before I go and talk about flags and the people involved, let me read another. Okay, so here we go. Frederick is saying, the state is not the problem. Not all states are the same. The states are just tools. Tools are not bad. It depends on how they are used. Some, if too many, are corrupt than others. Police can either... where is it? See more. Where is it? Oh yeah, the existing community. Look at the Isle of Man. It's not completely part of the UK. In many ways, a small country of 8,000 people. Okay, Frederick, I really appreciate and like what you're bringing up, these important things. I'm saying hi to Luke. I'm saying hi to Andre. A few people online. Joseph is there. Hi, Joseph. Richard, Susan probably is watching. And I'm really enjoying conversation or chatting with Frederick here because he's putting up some great conversations. Nuno is watching. I saw another person here. Mark Johnson. Hey, Mark. Mark's watching. Here we are. See more. Okay. It's not easy to live in a... Gee. Get the vitamins we need. Communities would have less importance and ability to exist as a community in a world with no countries. In a way, countries like... Okay, look, I'm sorry, Frederick. I don't agree with you at all. I'm sorry. Not nice to not agree, but you're saying things that just not real. Humanity has been living in communities a whole lot longer than it's been living in states, nation states. You're thinking that the supply chains that's bringing us kiwis from New Zealand, and you're thinking the bananas from banana republics. You're thinking that all of that is necessary for us to live, or the electronic goods coming from East Asia. You think that is life. Well, no, it's not. Life is water, food, shelter, right? And care and love and people. That's what life is. So all of those things have to be served by the community. But we're becoming less and less connected to that community. You sound, honestly, you sound like a globalist when you say things like this, that we need the nation state in order to survive. That is completely wrong. That is completely not true. That is not true at all, but that is the propaganda of the state. You need us. That was what Hitler did in the 1930s. He said, you need the state. And fascism itself, Mussolini in Italy, fascism, I've explained this before, but I'll say it again because some people may not know. Fascism means, and the symbol for it is what do you call it? Wheat, stalks of wheat, okay? All bound together, tightly bound together. If you have stalks of wheat, if you have one stalk of wheat, okay, very easy to break it. Very easy. You just snap it. It doesn't even snap. It just doesn't even make a sound. You just bend it over. Okay? One alone is weak. But you put a whole bunch together and bind them together tight, they're strong. You can't bend it. It's like a telephone book. You can't rip it. You know, together it's very strong. Telephone book. It shows you my age, eh? Nobody talks about telephone books anymore. But anyway, it used to be that the example of being able to rip a book in half, you couldn't do it with a telephone book, right? Because all the pages are there and it's just impossible to rip them at the same time. Same idea behind fascism. Fascism was the idea, which doesn't sound bad at all, right? It doesn't sound bad. But when you put that axe in the middle of the fascist bound wheat, the axe is the spine of that bunch of wheat. Now you've got the military state at the center of this. And then you've got what is the reality. You've got the handshake, not between the people and the state, between the corporation and the state. That's where you start to have problems, because now it's the corporate state, the corporation and the state. And look at today with the pharmaceutical companies and the state and all the rest of it. It's just exactly what fascism is. They are working to control you so that you buy their products, basically. You pay for their products. Billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars going to, for instance, the pharmaceutical companies because of the COVID stuff, right? Whereas anyway, I don't want to go there. It's too, if I have to defend this, we're lost. If I have to defend the need to build community over state, over nationalisms, I give up. Well, I don't give up. I never give up. I never give up, right? But no, it's really sad that we can't agree that it's our lives, our families, our friends are not the state. They should not be controlled by faceless, distant people. Again, I keep going back to China, but China has some wonderful. It's an ancient civilization, and there's one expression is the emperor. No, the mountains are high. The mountains are high, and the emperor is far away. Now, was there an emperor? Yes, there was an emperor. Yeah. Did he control the lives of the people? Yes, at a distance, through laws and policies and police and army and so on. Yes. But the mountains are high. And the emperor is far away. The emperor is not in the community. And there are mountains. They're very, very difficult terrain. They're very hard. The communication is not instantaneous, although today it is instantaneous. But in those times, the concept of the authority, even authoritarian authority, even fascist authority, was distant. It was far away. It wasn't in our communities. It was far away. And the mountains, the communication, the distance, the travel between them was very, very difficult. So we had freedom. I mean, I believe that's what that expression is essentially about. Do what you need to do in the best possible way for the benefit of your community in your community. Attend to your own affairs. Don't let some bosses in some parliament dictate what you're going to do and how you're going to live, especially not in freedom. Don't let that happen. They are your servants. They are not your bosses. You're the boss of them. Gotta wake up, folks. Stop being so subservient. Well, what are you? Where is your spine? Where is your courage? And remember, courage is contagious. When somebody does something and it is courageous, and I'm not saying hurt anybody, that's the worst thing you can be doing. You can ridicule them though, because this is the greatest power against fascism. That bound up state, and they have no sense of humor. None. Zero. They're not terribly intelligent people, generally speaking. There are some of them, certainly the crazy people, or the really fascistic people. Many of them are clever. They're psychopathic clever. But no, most of them are not that clever. They are just weak. They're looking for a father figure. They had terrible lives as children. They messed up their own lives. They're looking for someone to redeem them. They're looking for some way, some father figure to say, oh, good, I finally found my home. So this is the string. The best thing we can do in Conscience Land is ridicule these characters, because they are ridiculous. They are bombastic idiots and actors. And probably by the time you're hearing this, you're understanding who I'm talking about. The actors, the bombastic kind of idiots. Now, they're not like stupid or anything. They're smart people, of course. But they're acting like idiots. They're acting as if they have no conscience. They're just spewing word salads that don't do anything. They're just, well, our friend, Greta said blah, blah, blah. They're just talking. They're justifying their actions, like this mandate, what is it called? The Emergency Measures Act in Canada. They're just enacting these things, taking them into action and withdrawing them. I believe it's withdrawn now, but it doesn't matter. What matters is they did it, and they did it for unjustifiable reasons, and they can do it again because they have the power to do that. And that means that individual citizens are under threat all the time to have their bank accounts seized, to have their liberties taken away, to be jailed, to be considered an enemy of the state, and all of these things without due process, because it's an emergency act. So, you don't have a regular, representation in court and all the rest of it. You can just be thrown in jail. They take you off the street and put you in jail. No need for justification. This is called a police state. That is what a police state is. The police have the power to just stop you, arrest you, put you in jail, or put you in the hospital. They have the right to do that. Well, they don't have the right to do that, but they have the power to do that, right? Okay, so I was going to talk about flags. Shall I talk about flags? I think I'll save that for real citizens of Conscience Land, because I think that's a real treat, to understand this stuff about Conscience Land and how we deal with this concept and what we're seeing right now playing out in even Ukraine and in Syria and in Yemen. So it's a capture the flag game, right? It's a resource game. Capture the flag. Two sides have a flag. One side's capturing the other flag and destroying it or killing it or knocking it down and putting their flag there. This is very old. We've been doing this for a long time, right? So we have a plan we have an ethic and a way of doing things in Conscience Land, and it does involve flags, but they're not what you think. It's not flags that you think of, right? It's not the way we're going to solve this problem. We're going to solve this problem because everybody, when you learn about how we do it in Conscience Land, as a citizen, as an active citizen, as a caring citizen, you'll see that it's sort of brilliant. It's kind of brilliant in a way, because everybody understands it. And when everybody understands something, and then you use these memes, right? These ways of identifying yourself, right? Even the three fingers is identifying yourself. It's the three virus, right? It's a communicable idea, virally spread. That's identifying yourself. Not that you're like identified, in a negative way. Society, environment, economy, and balance, individual social responsibility, freedom, love, care, whatever you want it to mean. Look, it's on the poster there. Whatever you want it to mean, it means change. It's the structure. It's the three legs of a stool. There's a lot of very positive meanings, a lot of historical significance and metaphysical significance, even the number three. So you can see this, it's there. What I'm getting at is you need to participate in this. Now, I'm absolutely happy to fight, not to fight with people, but to argue on the behalf of decentralization. But you see here, I'm sorry, but it's beautiful, Frederick. Thank you so much for your comments, because they give me a really fantastic opportunity to not to criticize what you're saying, but to expand upon what you're saying. Because I think that what you're saying is a very, very, what very many people think. This is the way people think. For instance, communities would have less importance. Now, this is just these words. Words are important. Words are spells, right? Spells. Words project concepts into other people's minds, and other people, ruminate on those concepts, and it has the ability to change people's perception. So when you're saying here, communities would have less importance, I don't agree that they'd have a less ability to exist. That I don't agree with at all. You have a great ability to exist if you have the resources in your own community to live. That's the only way you exist, right? So, but what I'm making issue of is what I'm reading. It's saying communities would have less importance. Now, importance is a thing of ego. Importance is the thing that I think you would agree that capitalist society, of which I'm a member as well, but trying to reform, trying to escape the bad parts of it, certainly the global parts of it. Local capitalism is fine. That's how our little businesses work. We need to exchange money for goods, and we need to assemble enough money in order to, have some stability and cash flow. Yeah, I get that. It's not new to me. If someone knows my background, they'll understand that I think I have a pretty good grasp on that stuff. What I'm saying is you're using the word importance. And I think I can only relate to, what I experienced in my life. And again, China was 15 years of my life. It's a good portion of my life. So I want to say that hold on a second. I want to say that, part of, oops, put in the wrong thing. Just hold on one second here. Okay. Yeah. So where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about the experience in China in relation to importance. And one of the classic things, like I've been to 50 cities in China, pretty much every province except Tibet and Liaoning. They're like, I have traveled quite extensively in China. I've seen a lot of these cities, and I worked for the Chinese Academy of Sciences, so I had this sort of kind of importance in especially as a Westerner, and traveling, and I'm meeting with municipalities and governments kind of all the time, every week, in different parts of China. And one thing that is just sort of humorous to me was that I would receive a presentation, from all these councils and so on, as a guest, and they're trying to impress me, right? Which I'm a foreigner, and that's a natural thing. They're trying to impress me with importance, their importance as a community. Now, take a minute here to think about this. There are 666 or something like that cities in China. 600 cities. Now they're all competing to be important, right? They all want to be the number one. You can't all be number one. There's only one number one. And they have a lot of competition with Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou and so on. It's pretty hard to be number one city in China. But what they all did in their presentations, this is a classic, on their PowerPoints, right? They had a big circle. Almost every presentation I ever was given to me or I ever saw had this graphic, which was a circle that was whatever radius circle from that city, that was 300 million people, or some huge number, like let's say 300 million people, which is about the population of the United States, or maybe it's 385, but it's 400 million people. Let's say 400 million people. So they would say, within this radius of our city, there's a market of 400 million people. Now I saw that graphic all along, certainly along the eastern coast of China, right? Because all along the coast of China is a market of at least 400 million. It doesn't matter where you are. Wherever the center of that circle is, there's probably around 400 million people within that radius, whatever the radius was. So there's no more importance to one city next to another city next to another city. They're not more important. Oh dear. So that's one problem I have with the idea of importance. What's important to people, what's important to people is the services that the state, or the municipality in this case, gives to its citizens. Is there adequate water? Is there adequate housing? Is there adequate food delivery and security? Is there adequate education? Is there adequate, medical services for the community? But also all of these presentations, they all talked about their CBD. You know what CBD is? Not the cannabis thing. You know what the CBD is? Central Business District. They're all looking for foreign investment, direct foreign investment, and they're saying our CBD at the center of this circle has a market of 400 billion people, and it's ours. Which of course it's not theirs. There's the next town over is just 400 million people, a couple of million people up this way or down this way. So you see the futility of what I'm responding to this what Frederick has written here. Communities would have less importance. What's the importance? The importance is communities look after their people. That's the important thing. And does one community look after their people better than another? Well, evidently so. And why? Because the people demand it. The people say, no, forget the wars, forget the emperor is far away and the mountains are high. Talk about us, our lives. How are we eating? How are we getting water? How are we educating our children? What kind of medical services are we getting in our community? It's not coming from the government. It's coming from us and our organization of our community and how we work. And if communities, in the conscience land perspective, if communities adjacent to each other are cooperating with each other, they don't have to be each other. They don't have to be the same. They just need to live in harmony and exchange. They just need to, one place grows potatoes and the other place, has a lot of water. And this is an actual, I don't want to go down this road, but this is also a reality that I have seen in history, is the failure of some states. This is Europe I'm thinking about, and I think it's Greece or Macedonia or something. ancient times, there were places which had water, but no food. And there were, excuse me, there were places that had food or the good soil or relatively better soil, but no water. So what did they do? Well, one community cooperated with the next community and delivered water. And what did they get in exchange for, a little aqueduct or a little way, irrigation canal? What did they get in exchange for the water? Food. So both communities could coexist. Do we have to go back to that? Yeah, I'm afraid we do. We have to go, because the supply chains, getting your kiwis from New Zealand or your bananas from a banana republic is not going to be forever. You think, oh, it can't change, but wait until you find the shelves of the supermarket starting to be emptied. I mean, emptied by the consumer, but then not refilled. When this supply chain issue really starts to affect you, especially wars, I mean, gosh, the blocking of people's lives, whether they're Russians or Ukrainians or Syrians or Yemeni or whoever, you think that affects the supply chain? Of course it does. Do you not think people are going to go bankrupt? Of course they will. Do you think companies who are, doesn't matter what nationality they fly their flag of their ship under, doesn't matter. The crews are from different places. The ownership is different. Reality sucks, reality hits you. And the fact is you have to deal with these things. And it's people. If you can't get along with people, if people can't get along with each other, nothing happens. Or bad things happen. War happens. So that's what we have to do in Conscience Land, is be more of a team human. I'm obviously avoiding speaking about these shapers, the shapers and the young leaders. I wish I was more sophisticated with my videos, because there are some just mind-boggling videos that I've seen over the last couple of days of the admission, of the bold-faced admission. I mean, they don't think there's anything wrong with this, these globalists. They're saying it in the parliaments, in meetings with the parliamentarians. They're saying that there's 50% or more of the people in certain parliaments in the world who are, I don't know how to say it, infected with the globalist mentality. They are inculcated, they are mesmerized, they are hypnotized. And I said this yesterday actually on a video, you just look at their actions. Look at their physical, the bobbing of the head, all this. You look at this, and I am, very interested student of psychology, but I invite you look it up. You look at these behaviors. You look at how people's internal systems work when they're facing guilt of knowing their own actions are wrong, knowing they're wrong. Look at the footage. Maybe you won't see it in the footage from the 1930s, but, wow, this is serious. The people who have infiltrated our governments, they are our governments. They are our central authorities, are not working for you. They're working for another organization who will remain nameless, except if you read my newsletter. If you read the newsletter, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So what did I say here? Yeah, set your clocks back to 1984, folks. Set your clocks back tonight. And by the way, everyone should read 1984. We read it in school, which is amazing. I mean, that was one unbelievable thing about my standing back and looking at my background, my history, and my experience, is that in Canada it was required reading Animal Farm, 1984, all these books which were in retrospect, this is what's being banned. These are the books that are being banned in the United States, right? By the fascists. They are being banned. Why? Because they make you think. And if you read these books and you look around at the news and what's happening today, they go, oh my gosh, are these prediction manuals or are they, fantasy novels? So read 1984 or reread it, because some of you have already, and that's you'll just be taken back to the time when you read it originally and thought, oh my gosh, what a fantasy novel. Boy, wouldn't that be horrible if this actually came to pass? And then you look around today and you'll see that it's happening. Oh yeah, what I wrote here is huge psyops to convince us of our enemies. Yeah, it's called gaslighting, and I think that's what I would like to maybe shut this down. I'll read more, but maybe not leave this too long. But we're being gaslit, what's called gaslighting. We're being made to think that we're crazy. And certainly in a month or so, I've been thinking, my God, everything I believed was a lie. All the things that I was working for, putting all my energy into, is seemingly a lie. It's pretty awful to feel that way. So, fear, self-doubt, and self-censorship. This is what exactly they want. They want you to self-censor. Shut up. Sit down. Go play your war games, on video. Just be out of it. Don't be aware of anything that we're working behind the curtain to pull the strings. Don't be aware of that. Just be happy and be mindless. Confusion and misinformation. I mean, gosh, we're just. Oh, and I'd say then change enemies. Yeah, and just look at the enemies that we change. Again, I refer, maybe it's annoying people now, but it's important to me because it's where I grew up, and I know the place like the back of my hand. I grew up there, and even in Ottawa, I went to school. I did one of my diplomas in media, in radio and television production. You wouldn't know it from what mess I'm making here, but I studied in Ottawa at Algonquin College, radio and television production. Fear, self-doubt, so yeah, I forget what I was going to say about that. But the manipulation of the media and the abdication of the media for the responsibility of the media is just horrific. Yeah. Okay, communities would. I'm just going to read Frederick's comment again. Communities would have less importance and ability to exist as a community in a world with no countries. Okay, I don't agree, but I mean, communities wouldn't have less importance. They would be very important to the people living in those communities. And the people in the communities would have to look after their communities even more. Why? Because they don't have this illusion that the state is looking after them. I'm not talking about bridges. It used to be that communities built their own bridges. They didn't come from a central authority. They used to be, some things were chartered by the government, but largely people built their own stuff in their own communities because they didn't have resources outside. Well, we got to go back to that. You got to have a community that has the ability to look after itself. You can't depend on the central government. We got dependent on the central governments because of mobility, because of oil, because now we can move around easier, fly in the air and do all kinds of things because of oil. When we were still riding horses, we had to build our own bridges. There wasn't any, central bridge building. And actually there isn't still. Bridges are built by contractors who have machines in communities. And often they operate as communities. And often they are from very much the same community. They exchange their skills with other communities and usually use money to do so. But that might not be true forever. As economies collapse, as the U.S. dollar collapses, as all these things collapsing right now, inflation going through the roof. When that money starts to be, wheelbarrows full of U.S. dollars for a loaf of bread, when that starts to happen, Are these machines going to vaporize? Is there going to be no fuel? No, there will be fuel. Somehow it'll get distributed around, probably mostly to the military, but there will be some fuel available. So will the big diggers and front end loaders and the big heavy machinery, will it stop working? No, it'll continue to work as long as you can get parts, which will be probably very, very difficult. But it'll continue to work. You can put fuel in it. You can build and excavate and pour cement and do various things. Although cement will be a problem, but some communities have the capacity to make the cement themselves. So if you follow what I'm saying, is that actually we do operate as communities, but we don't think independently as communities. We think we're dependent on the other central governments, but we're not. Actually, they're dependent on us. They depend on us maintaining our abilities to construct the bridges and make the cement. So what has to happen in this era, I'd say this year, is people have to start to say, hey, no, I am not working for you. I'm working for the community. I'm working for me. I'm working for the community, and I am going to shut off your access to what I do, and I'm going to devote that to my community and to the friends of my community. So if someone in my community or outside my community needs a bridge built, we'll build that bridge, and we'll figure out a way to compensate for it. It might be fuel, it might be, food, it might be care and respect. It could be all of those things. Right? But we'll figure it out. The main thing is the bridge has to be built or repaired or whatever the thing is. It won't be a dictate from a central government saying, okay, well, we're going to make HS2. Okay, we're going to make HS2, which is a train system in the UK, completely not needed, completely destroying the environment, completely stupid. No, government, we're going to go ahead. We're going to cut down the trees. We're going to eliminate the old forests. We're going to do this. We're going to do that because we want to. And we're going to tell you, and we're going to push people around. We're going to chop down trees with people in them. Well, they haven't. I hope they haven't actually done that yet, but certainly there were protesters strung up in trees over bodies of water, and they did cut those down and allow the protesters to fall in the water. Fortunately, no one's hurt. I think it was planned out that way, but will they do it? Yep, sure they'll do it. They'll hurt you for the state. They'll hurt you, the people of the community, to further the economic interest of the state. They will do that. Absolutely. They have, they will continue to do so. All right. This is a great comment. Communities would have less importance and ability to exist as a community in a world with no countries. Well, in a world with no countries, is, will there be no countries like at the end of this year? No, of course not. I'm not trying to suggest such a thing. I'm suggesting that people stop thinking in terms of their countries. I'm a Canada person, or I'm a UK person. No, you're a global person, but not a globalist. You're not trying to control others from a small central group of people. You're a distributed, conscious human being who cares not only for yourself and your family and your neighbors and your community, but you care for the world. Why? Because you don't want the world to disintegrate into an unsurvivable place, a place that doesn't have the way that we can all live. That's in your own self-interest, that you don't have pollution coming over the borders from another state into your home. That's in your interest. So let's stop supporting the state. I'm not saying destroy it, crush it. It'll crush and collapse on its own, as long as you pay your attention to your community. Okay, maybe I'm beating a dead horse here, but it's not a dead horse. It's a live horse, and it's out of the stable now. In a way, a country is a type of community. Okay, you're listening to UN, okay? And I did for a long time. They say a community of nations, the United Nations, a community of nations. From their perspective, absolutely. Absolutely. What are the nations? They're corporations. They're incorporations. They're representing a power. Is it the people that they're representing? No. You can see this. It's evident in the last months, years, long time, centuries probably. But we have seen it evidently right now. In the last months, it's not for the people. It's against the people. It's the corporations lobbying and paying the senators and the parliamentarians and so on to say things and do things and pass laws in their favor against the people. Okay, it's not for the people, it's against the people. Why? So that the people remain subservient, so that the people remain sheepish consumers. So that we think, oh, there's only a selection of this because that's all we're offered, so that's all there is. Well, that's not true. There was a huge diversity of things offered, not everything, but at different places had different things, and we all survived. Okay, so it can be done. In a way, country is a type of community. Country has communities. Again, that brings up the melting pot versus mosaic. USA is a melting pot. Canada is generally regarded as a mosaic. Different communities retain language, culture, traditions. They retain spirit and differentiation. Why? Well, that's a Canadian kind of ethic, right? We're not trying to stop people from being who they are. We just say live in harmony, help each other. Everybody's okay. Little bit different. Well, not a little bit, a lot different from our neighbors to the south. They have a concept, and it's not the individual Americans that have this concept. It's actually it's a manifest destiny. It's the whole basis, the slavery, a whole basis of control that the United States was founded on. It's a corporation. Come on. It's the Anglophones came to the United States and said, this is a bloody big corporation we can make money from. We can exploit all of this resource and these people and make money, get capital for ourselves. We can do this. And they did, and they have. Now, the problem in that case is that you have to melt everybody into a flag waving, saluting, whatever, You have to, everybody has to be the same, in effect. Well, there's the alarm going off. Woo, 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 woo. Everybody has to be the same is the trigger. And everybody isn't the same. There's a lot of diversity. There's enormous diversity. Every person's different, and every community's slightly different. And making them all homogenized into the same thing is not a particularly good plan. All right, in a way, country, look at the Isle of Man. Well, okay, I'm not very far from the Isle of Man right now. Admittedly, I've never been to the Isle of Man, but actually I have heritage from the Isle of Man. So, okay, Isle of Man, what are you going to say here? The Isle of Man, not completely part of the UK. In many ways, it's like a small country, 880,000 people. I don't know what the point of your what are you arguing? That a small community of 80,000 people that happens to be treated as a nation, but it's really not a nation. It's an island, and it's got a community on it, and there's 80,000 people there, and the UK has said we own you. So what are you talking about? I mean, is that northern? What's it called? The Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland. Is that a nation? Or no? No, it's part of the